Hi guys, this is Caroline Zwick from carolineswick.com, and this is the fourth video of my interview series called Find Your Voice, which is basically meant to give you a private insight into how different people out there have found their voice and have used it to create lives for themselves that they are madly in love with today, and ways in which they're adding value to other people's lives. Today I have the pleasure to be here with my friend Jessica Porcini. Hi, Jess.
Hi.
Jessica is a weight loss coach who does things a little bit differently from other people. And especially, like for me, like when I hear weight loss, I like shiver a little bit because all I can think of is calorie counting and like torturous workouts and all of this stuff that's really not fun and is making our lives more restrictive. So Jessica is different because she teaches people how to laugh themselves skinny, which just hearing that makes me super happy. So Jessica, I would love to hear from you. How do you describe what you do today?
So what I do essentially is helping women laugh themselves skinny. And what that means is I take a fun, lighthearted approach and combine it with kick-ass weight loss strategies. And the two of them combined help women lose weight without dieting or calorie counting or becoming a slave to the gym or, giving up going out to eat or any of that. Mm-hmm. And it's really, essentially what it is really having fun while you're losing weight and having results that last instead of losing a little bit of weight and then gaining it all back. That rat race. So it's really long-lasting weight loss with a fun, lighthearted approach.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's because so many people I know struggle with yo-yo dieting and going up and down and up and down, and do you think it is because, people kind of stop living their lives and then they're once they stop living their lives, they can lose weight, but as soon as they go back to actually living their lives, all the weight comes back because it's not lost in an authentic way? Is that kind of
yeah, definitely. It's I think that people will put dieting at the forefront, mm-hmm. and everything else hits a pause button. Their social life stops. They go to the gym at night after work instead of hanging out with their hubby or their loved ones or their kids.
Yeah.
And that's only sustainable for a short period of time. Same thing with the juice cleanse. If you do a juice cleanse, sure, you can only starve yourself for 3 days, but after that, you're going to be ravenous and, dying for food.
Mm-hmm.
That only lasts for a short period of time. And the other thing is that there are a lot of different factors go into losing weight, like your job, like your lifestyle, like your relationships, like your social life, how you work out, how you eat, your relationship with food, your relationship with your body. And if you don't tackle those things, if you don't look at them and really edit them to be nourishing for you and your lifestyle, mm-hmm. then they're going to slowly creep up on you. And usually that's the thing that hits you in the back of the knees and creates sabotage, mm-hmm. because you can only put the pause button on them for so long before they come back and bite you in the butt, basically.
Mm-hmm. So it's you're all about creating holistic change that takes everything in your life into account instead of focusing on one thing and being this is the problem. It's your whole life has to change and fall into a different kind of setting or puzzle piece,
mm-hmm.
in order to all work out together in a new constellation.
Yeah, and it goes under that. I always say this to my clients, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how we approach food is the same way we approach work and the same way we approach, relationships and things, mm-hmm. like that. And if we try and fix or hyper-focus on one area without seeing how it totally affects everything, mm-hmm. then it's just not going to work. And that's why weight loss doesn't work for so many people, because they haven't found something that's easy for them, and they haven't found something that basically is a no-brainer, because there's only so much energy that you can devote towards your health and your weight loss goals before you totally sacrifice everything else in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that you take a humorous approach to like solving this like big issue, you know.
Yeah, I mean, with weight loss, there is so much shame surrounded. Like, so many women don't want to talk about it. So many women have so many issues with their bodies. Yeah. And whether they have 2 pounds to lose or they have 50 pounds, you know, we as women, we all have something going on with our body. There's always a part that we hate. There's always a part that we hide. There's always days we don't fit into our clothes. And nobody wants to talk about it. Like, on the outside, everyone's like, no, I'm fine. I'm perfect. I'm happy. And then on the inside, they're, like, dying and cringing and, like, basically rotting. Yeah. And we have to start bringing all of this to light. But it's so heavy and it's such a sensitive and quote-unquote embarrassing topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about it unless there is some humor behind it, unless there is that spaciousness, unless there's someone saying, hey, like, there's a lot more to life than, you know, what happened with you and the cookies last night. So why don't we put that aside and look at, like, what we can do. Yeah. Have some spaciousness. Because the one thing that I've realized that humor, like, even just, like, joking around with friends, is it brings spaciousness between tragedy. And that's something that talking about things is one thing, but bringing light to a situation creates an even greater space between what happened and, like, the work that needs to be done. And only from that spaciousness can you really create change. Because I know, like, if you've ever been in a situation and it's like, it's almost like looking for your sunglasses when they've been on top of your head. Yeah. The spaciousness and laughter and comedy bring to it is like somebody taking the sunglasses off and being like, here they are. And you're like, oh. So that's what, like, comedy, humor, and fun bring to the situation. Yeah. And it almost, like, makes me think of, like, little kids in school, right? Like, if you kind of, like, have a scolding teacher, you're not going to learn in that class, or you're not going to, like, take in that information and then, like, apply it to your life in a constructive way. Versus if you have a teacher that creates that spaciousness and that can, like, teach with a sense of humor, like, that's the stuff that you actually, like the information that you take in and actually turn into something that's useful to you in your life. So it seems like very similar to, like, how we even learn, like, as little kids, right? Right. Like, nobody liked that teacher who was, like, a bitch. Yeah. It's like you just have nightmares about that person. You don't remember what you learned in that class. But the teacher who, like, had games and played with you and, like, made things different, like, created a different experience, is what people remember. And I truly believe that that's, like, the way of the world, and that's kind of the way things are going as far as, like, retaining information, is that people want to have an experience. Like, I know there have been times where I've gone on, like, trips and things like that, and I've learned so much more just from having an experience rather than, like, sitting and listening to a lecture for an hour and a half. Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And I'm all about, you know, like, creating experiences and learning, like, through positive experiences, the stuff that we think is the scariest. Yeah, definitely. So, okay, so what I, of course, want to know, since this is the Find Your Voice interview, I would love to hear how you even came to do what you're doing today. Because I think that, you know, like, hearing you talk about what you're teaching all of these women, like, there's so much passion and authenticity behind what you do, but it's also your career, it's also your job, you know, and I know that so many people out there really struggle with finding something that feels, like, positive and authentic and fun for them. Like, they have a really hard time figuring out their path. So I would love to just hear a little bit about your past and how you came to do what you do today. Sure. So it's a long story, but I'll try and keep it short. So my issues with my body started when I was 16. I was dancing ballet, and I was told that I needed to lose weight. But, I mean, from the outside, I didn't. You know, I was a beanpole, just like all the other girls, but my instructor told me that I needed to lose weight. And being as young as I was, I started to think that there was something inside wrong with me. Mm-hmm. So I started exercising twice as much. I started watching everything that I was putting in my mouth, counting calories, buying diet books at 16, like really just becoming obsessed with my weight. And on the outside, like to everyone else, I looked perfect. But on the inside, there started to be this relationship with my body where I just didn't feel good enough. Mm-hmm. And no matter how much I exercised, no matter how much I ran, on top of dancing, and then no matter how little I ate, I just didn't feel good enough. Mm-hmm. So that really sparked a whole host of just like a snowball effect of issues with my body. And it continued for a number of years. My weight would fluctuate from, 108 pounds up to 140 and everywhere in between. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I was 22, and I went on this retreat to Jamaica with an exercise, class I was taking here, and really started to realize that there are certain foods that don't agree with my body. So growing up, I had all of these like digestive issues. Doctors said I had IBS, I had been hospitalized for stomach aches, this, that, and the other. And growing up, like I started to get like really bad acne and things like that. So I went to Jamaica and discovered that I had a dairy allergy. And here I'd gone and seen all of these doctors, and they couldn't tell me squatta about what was wrong with me. So I came home from Jamaica and cut dairy out of my diet cold turkey. And I'm Italian, so that's like one of our major food groups. Yeah. Cheese, and more cheese.
And cream in the pasta.
And chocolate and ice cream, all the good stuff. So I was really kind of at a loss for what I was supposed to eat. So I just started educating myself more and more, and really started to create a new way of eating, and through that discovered the power of food. Mm-hmm. And really discovered how there were certain things that would affect my body in certain ways. And that was really the beginning shift of a different relationship with my body. One that was much more nourishing. One that was like, we had a better understanding of each other. I knew the foods that were right for my body. And from that, I really started to see some miraculous changes in my body. Like my skin had cleared up. My belly had flattened out. I no longer felt sluggish and bloated. I had energy.
Because it's like, really, it's like all of a sudden, like instead of like fighting against your body, you were able to like align with it and fight with it.
Exactly. So in doing that, I, as I was starting to discover the things about my body, I was working in a fashion marketing company doing marketing for a plus-size clothing company. So as I was discovering all this stuff about my body and food, I was surrounded by women who really needed to know this information. And I just remember sitting in our company-wide meeting at one point and our CEO saying, like, the pros and the cons and the pluses and minuses of the industry. And one of the pros, he said, was that obesity is on the rise. Meaning, like, this is a great thing for our company. Mm-hmm. I just remember sitting there, like, looking around and being like, this is not the way this should be. Like, we need to be empowering women to feel good in their bodies, no matter what size they are, not to, like, keep gaining weight and keep buying clothes. Like, that's just not okay. Mm-hmm. So that was a major turning point, and, I knew a lot of information, and I had to share it with the world. Mm-hmm. So I quit my job and enrolled in nutrition school, and I, at the time, was started to teach fitness classes, too. So as I started my business, I eventually let go of teaching fitness classes to do it full-time. But in the meantime, like, in the small progressions of creating everything, I was kind of downloading information to my mom along the way, and just kind of like, hey, I wear a mask, hey, I wear a mask. Uh-huh. And at 60 years old, she dropped 30 pounds, like, effortlessly. And I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. Yeah. So that's when I kind of, like, pulled everything together from my past and my relationship with my body and how dieting doesn't get us anywhere. It never got me anywhere except for like a giant hole of self-hatred, and really pulled everything together and was like, you know what? We need to top this off with some fun and like some whipped cream and a cherry on top, because nobody's going to do this stuff unless it's fun. Mm-hmm. So I really made it my mission to figure out a way that is fun, easy, and successful for women to lose weight. And people are having amazing results with it. Mm-hmm. Not only did I fix my body issues like along the way and really started owning my body and, you know, loving my beauty, but I also started to see so many women like effortlessly drop 10, 20 pounds when we would work together. Mm-hmm. And that's really how Laugh Yourself Skinny got birthed.
Yeah. And I think, like, I just, you know, like, was thinking, like, as you were talking, how when we are kind of, like, in this place of shame and, like, dissatisfaction with our own bodies, like, we become so, like, rigid, and we, like, build up this wall of, like, also, you know, thinking that, like, it's impossible to, like, feel good and beautiful in our own bodies, because we've gone through, like, years and years of not feeling that way. And I think what laughter really does, like, laughter really tears down those walls, right? And, like, laughter is something that, like, happens spontaneously and, like, that has to be vulnerable. And I think that's a big piece also of, like, you know, making yourself vulnerable in this process and, like, really, like, tearing down the wall that you've built between, like, yourself and, like, your body.
Yeah.
So I can totally see how, like, laughter just, like, eases that struggle, you know?
Yeah, not only from, like, an emotional place, but also from a very physiological place, too. Like, just laughing and having fun, like, even just talking to you right now, like, is fun. And, like, that creates a different chemical cocktail in our body that actually promotes weight loss. Like, it actually speeds up our metabolism. But when we're stressed, and we're in that struggle, and we're in that constant fight, or we think our body is our enemy, or our body's off doing one thing, and our mind has a different track, and there's that, like, that tear between them, that creates stress. And that creates a stress hormone in the body, and that makes it physically impossible to lose weight. No matter how little you eat, no matter what exercise you do, if you are stressed and you're living a miserable life, you're not going to be able to lose weight. It's just not physically possible. Mm-hmm.
Wow, yeah, that's, I mean, it makes so much sense when you think about it, but I think in our society, like, we're so trained to think that, like, things have to be hard in order to, like, be successful in the long term. Like, you have to, like, work really hard, you know, like, even, like, suffering through your job in order to, like, get to a point where you can, like, be proud and happy and successful. And, like, same with, like, weight loss, that, like, it somehow has to be, like, really hard in order to be, like, worth it at the end. And just kind of, like, instead of, like, you know, like inviting more and more harshness and more struggle into our lives, like, allowing ease to enter and allowing, like, fluidity to come in and, like, those types of things.
Right.
So what I really love about your story is that it really, again, like, grew out of, like, who you really were, you know, that you weren't, like, trying to, like, find, like, fulfillment or your purpose or whatever you might want to call it, like, in the outside world to be kind of, like, put on top of you, but that, like, your purpose and, like, your career today and the way you, like, your life stands right now, like, it really grew from inside of you, like, grew out of, like, something that probably was really hard for you, obviously, like, with, like, you know, having dairy allergy and, like, not knowing about it for however long, and, like, all of that, which, like, you could have sat on top of that and just been, like, you know, feeling like a victim and feeling like life served you bad cards, like, that kind of thing. But instead that you really took that and said, no, like, I'm going to find a solution, and, like, then even, like, turn it into something that you're now, like, enriching other people's lives with, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, you know, one of the things that a lot of people reflect back to me about my business and the work that I do is that everything has, like, Jessica sprinkles on it. Like, you know, just looking at my website or, like, looking at my posts on Facebook or even my YouTube videos, it's like everything is me. And, like, and I think that's, like, really, really refreshing for a lot of people because, I mean, I was just watching TV the other day and there's, like, do you feel fat in your clothes? Like, all these, like, weight loss commercials, I'm like, oh, my God. Like, there's just, like, no one there, like, holding your hand. And, like, there's no personality. It's just, like, so cookie cutter. And we're not cookie cutter people. Like, I'm not like you, and you're not like me, and not like the rest of us. So we need to have something different, and it needs to be tailored and unique. And believe that everyone's unique. And that being able to, like, pull out of my growth process and put it into my business is the same way, like, I acknowledge my uniqueness and acknowledge everyone else's who I work with or come in contact with. And I think, you know, if we're kind of take a stop point for a minute and talk about business, I think that's, like, a really important thing is, like, we think about business as, like, competition and things like that. But no, like, there is no competition, essentially, because we're all different.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's really important that we start to recognize that we are all different and that we all have a unique voice and we all have a uniqueness about us, and to really let that shine, because that's what people love. Like, that's what people drink up. And, you know, if you're stressed or you're overweight or unhappy with yourself, you know, that just only dims that light even more and more and more.
Yeah. Where, like, we forget that the power, like, our true power is in our individuality. And it doesn't matter if, like, you know, like you and I, like, if you own your own business and if you're pouring all of your personality into that, and therefore there's no competition because there's just nobody like you, or if you're, you know, even in a corporate job, like, really, like, allowing yourself to, like, do things the way, like, you do them best, and, like, allowing your individuality to come through, I think that that will make you a much more desirable and unique resource, and it will make you a lot happier because you're not constantly trying to, like, force yourself to do things the way other people do them and not the way you would naturally do them.
Right, exactly. But it can also be really scary. I just want to be totally candid. Like, letting your uniqueness fly and, like, your freak flag fly is, like, really scary. Like, it's like, oh my God, will people like this?
Yeah.
And usually they love it because they can tell, like, it's authentic. They can tell it's truly you and everything. But it's, like, being on the brink of being like, oh my God, do I really let my true colors show?
So, yeah.
Can be so scary.
Yeah. And, like, knowing that, like, it's better to, like, have a few people who just, you know, don't agree with your message and, like, don't like it, but then have a lot of other people who will just love it, instead of, like, everybody kind of just being like, like, it's okay. It's, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like having, it's like either being vanilla or being, like, Moose Tracks ice cream. Like, there's only a small amount of people who really love Moose Tracks ice cream. Everybody can do with vanilla. Like, if that's the only flavor they have, everyone's cool with that. It's not great. Not everyone's choosing vanilla. But, like, there is a tiny, tiny sliver of the people who love Moose Tracks ice cream. And I'd rather be Moose Tracks than vanilla.
Yeah, I like it. So one other question I have for you, I would love to hear, like, once you kind of, like, figured out what you wanted to do with your life and, like, really started to, like, follow, like, your own voice, like you were describing that meeting that you had in your old job where you were just like, this is so wrong. Like, this does not, you know, like, it's not in alignment at all with, like, who I am or what I want to add to the world and, like, all this stuff. So, like, once you made that break and, like, quit your job and, like, started doing your own thing, like, of course it's scary and stuff, but, like, how did your life change, like, in other areas? Like, how did your relationships change? Like, how did your, like, we already talked a little bit about your health and, like, your work, but, like, how did your life change? Like, did you start playing differently? Did you, you know, like, all those things? Because I think it's all interrelated. Like, sometimes people, like, think, like, oh, I'm just going to figure out my career and then, like, I'll be happy. But, like, they don't realize that, like, if you make one really, like, important and significant shift in your life, everything else is going to adjust and fall into a different place also. So I would love to hear, like, how you shifting your career focus changed other areas in your life.
Well, I remember when I first quit my job, I was, like, going off to teach my classes, like, and I taught a lot. So I remember I was literally, like, skipping down the street. I was so excited. Like, I had goosebumps every day. Like, I was so excited. And then, of course, like, that wears off a little bit. I mean, you're still thrilled that you get to, like, dictate your own life. But things definitely changed for me. And if I were to kind of put a headline on everything, it was more of, like, I was the creator of my life at that point. And I was the person in charge of everything. And that I really needed to step out of, like, being a victim. And what I mean by that is, like, when I say victim, like, realizing that, like, your life is kind of just happening around you and you're stuck in it, instead of being kind of, like, the conductor of your life and standing there and being like, okay, you do this now, you do that, and you do this. And, like, for me, you know, making the transition, I really needed to have support. And one of the support systems that I really, you know, still rely on very heavily is my family. And, like, will they have my back? And so I really had to, like, start showing up in my family in a different way. It's like, this is what I'm doing. Like, are you in or are you out? Instead of coming to them crying and being like, oh, yeah, and letting them try and figure it out, it's more of like, okay, this is what's going on. This is what I need. Are you in or are you out? And same thing, like, with my relationships, too. I, you know, after that point was like, still dating and things like that, and was dating people who, you know, were jealous of what I was doing, was, you know, like, jealous of the freedom that I had. And there were some people who weren't supportive of what was going on for me. And it was like, I had to make some pretty hefty decisions of, like, okay, like, is this really a nourishing relationship for me? And I think everything just really started to snowball and change, and realize that, like, I was the creator of my life. Like, from that point on, I was the one in charge. And, like, it can be a very liberating feeling. And it can also be a very overwhelming feeling, because you're like, oh my God, it's just me.
Yeah.
And to really...
Yeah, and, like, having to, like, make all of these decisions yourself, you know, like, I think that's one of the, like, biggest things that comes up in, like, my sessions with my clients is, like decision making, and, like, the fear of making the wrong decision, and, like, all this stuff, you know, where, like, you're really confronting yourself, and, like, how much you actually, like, trust in yourself when you are the creator of your own life.
Right. It all comes down to, like, self-trust and self-love. At that point, like, if we're really to distill it down to the nitty-gritty, is, like, you really have to trust yourself. Because if you're in the corporate world and you're making decisions, it's like, okay, well, there's 20 other people in this meeting. If I make a decision, like, and it's kind of the wrong decision, someone else is going to catch it.
Tell you,
like, you know, like, I've got my back covered. Yeah. You're sitting at your desk trying to decide whether or not to do X, Y, and Z, or work with this person. There's no one else around. Yeah. It's really like, do you trust yourself? And I don't know if a lot of people realize that when they, like, first quit their jobs and say they want to go out on their own. It's like, I know I didn't. It's kind of like, oh, this is what I have to learn. Something, okay.
Yeah. Same here. One lesson that was, like, just to, like, kind of, like, piggyback on what you already were talking about, also, like, you know, not necessarily, like making the decision and, like, making the right decision, but, like, not abandoning yourself when you made a wrong decision, right? And, like, really being, like, the kind of, like, bigger person, or, like, your own boss, where, like, if you make the wrong decision, you can also say to yourself, like, okay, well, this wasn't 100% right, but now it's about course correcting. And, like, how can I, like, course correct, like, this decision that was made with my best intention, but just didn't pan out the way I was looking for it to pan out. And, like, not kind of, like, not abandoning yourself for, like, having made a decision that, like, didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, you know?
Right, because I think when you're making decisions from a place of, like, what's in alignment for you, and I think you talk a lot about, like, finding your voice. So, like really listening to yourself and listening to your gut is, like, if you're making decisions from there, you're never wrong, because, like, your gut will never steer you wrong. Sure, things might not have, like, been as successful as you had expected, expected. But it's also like getting in check with your expectations. It's like, were they realistic? Was there something else missing, or was it my decision that was wrong? And then, like, so it could be the decision, or it could have been like other factors that in that situation that were just not adding up to meet the goals.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to, like, fundamentally, that I find, like, in myself over and over, and as well as in my clients, and I think you talked about it also with, like, even approaching weight loss. It's all about, like, the relationship that you're able to have with yourself, and, like, what that relationship looks like. And that, like, on top of, like, if you think about it, like, if you're trying to, like, build a house on soil that's just, or, you know, grow a field in soil that's just not, like, fruitful, and that's not, you know, well taken care of, like, nothing's gonna grow. But if you're able to, like, create a relationship with yourself that is, you know, like, vibrant and supportive and inspiring and, like, trusting, I think from there, like, anything can grow, right?
Yeah, anything. And even, I think some of the most surprising things happen when, like, the soil is fertile. You know, like, you might plant some seeds, but something else might grow from it.
Yeah. I love
that.
It
really all comes down to that, because literally, like, if you're grounded in, like, self-love and self-actualization and that inner knowing, and you really know your own voice and, like, your gut wisdom, like, a bomb could go off and you'd know how to take care of yourself, you know? Like, you know, no one's running around, like, freaking out, because, like, hey, like, me and myself and we know what's going on,
and
you know?
alignment.
We know how to take care of each other, and we're going to do this together. But when one part of you, like, either me is off in the coffee shop, or myself is, like, hitting the town and eating brownies or whatever, you know, like, if one of those people are missing, it's like, bomb goes off, you're gonna, like, run around
scramble.
Where's me? Where's myself? Where's I? Like, I don't want to be back here. Like, you know, shit hits the fan. So it's like, you know, really having all of your peeps, I call them, like, we're made up of all different parts, and having them all, like, together and working together is so important.
Yeah. So do you think, like, if I asked you about, like, one piece of advice for people to, like, take as a takeaway message, would that be it?
Yeah, I think that would be part of it. But, like, even, like, if we were talking to, like, some people who didn't necessarily know, like, if they're not necessarily in tune with that, really it just starts with slowing down. Is, like, really starting to slow down and start having a conversation with yourself. Like, really starting to check in and talk with yourself. Like, and I teach my clients this all the time, is, like, before you go and, like, eat lunch, like, ask yourself, like, what am I hungry for? Like, what does my body want? And usually what ends up happening is our mind kind of gets in the way. Is like, wait, you want chicken? Or, like, you know, like, just kind of, like, blurts out whatever, like, like it has ADD or something. But you have to, like, be like, okay, and, like, wait a minute and, like, see what else comes up, because usually our minds are operating at such a fast rate, and our bodies move a little bit slower. But where we need to really start, like, finding our voice and finding that gut wisdom and really tuning into what's in alignment with us, the decisions need to come from our body, not our head. And it's, like, being able to decipher the two, and, like, when we're moving at such a fast pace, it's all in the head. Like, we're all up here. But when we start to slow down and talk to ourselves, that's when the body can start responding. And it takes trial and error, too. Like, you know, when you're just starting to discover that inner voice, is, like, really, you know, experimenting and experimenting with it, and, like, kind of checking back in is, like, was that the right decision? Like, was that really what I wanted? Or was it something else? And, like, just slowing down, I think, is really important.
A good question to ask yourself in order to, like, get a little bit, like, in order to slow down and get to the gut level, I think is also, instead of, you know, like, asking yourself, like, what do I want, or what do I think I want, is, like, what do I actually feel for? Because feeling and intuition are anchored together, versus, like, thinking happens at, like, the brain level, where, like, a lot of times we're buzzing and we're sort of on autopilot. So I really like that advice of, like, slowing things down. And I think that's probably one of the toughest things for so many of us, you know, especially when we live in big cities and, like, things happen fast.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I just got back, I was in Utah last month in, like, the middle of the mountains, and just, like, instantly felt like everything went, like, slow motion. And then, like, getting back here to Philly, like, it was just, like, I could just feel how I instantly started to get sucked back into that, like, energetic spiral of, like, go, go, go. Mm-hmm. And, like, I constantly have to remind myself to slow down. And that's a great idea. Like, what do I feel for? Like, or what do I need? Or, you know, what's the feeling that's going on? Because, yeah, I mean, for so many years, I was just totally living up into my head, and now it's just, like, really all about getting back down into my body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That sounds amazing. All right, so I think we're coming to the end of the interview, but before we let everybody go, I would love to tell them to check out your Laugh Your Skinny Escape retreat that's coming up in April. It sounds amazing and so fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's taking place in April, and spots should be opening up soon for it, and there's only 7 spots open, but it's basically an excuse to get away, to slow down, to really start nourishing your body, working out, healthy food, and we're doing a body confidence photo shoot at the end of the week, which I'm so excited about.
Who doesn't want to do that? Like, you told me about that, and I was like, oh my god, like, this is like the stuff that, like, you know, people, like, tell themselves, like, oh, like, wishful thinking, like, that would be so fun to do, but nobody actually does it. So I love that you're incorporating it into, like, a retreat, and I'm sure by the end of it, everyone's going to be glowing from all the amazing food and exercise that you're going to give them.
That's the plan. That's definitely the intention.
Yeah. All right, well, all the information is going to be right under this video, so go check it out. And thank you so much, Jess, for taking the time. It was so fun to check in with you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was so fun chatting with you. And I love the view out your window.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, exactly. All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you. Bye.